Today I'm starting out with this. What is this little thing? You have any idea how much grief it's supposed to have caused? No. Just a simple little piece of fruit. Usually looks like it's shaped kind of like a heart. I don't know if I'm right really, somewhere in my catechism studies as a child and my various readings here and there, I got certain ideas in my head. I'm not sure if they're right or not, but I'll share them and then go from there. I'm going to base off those. Somewhere I got the idea that the tree of knowledge was an apple tree. And I always just took that for granted. And I was always real curious, even as a kid, why the apple was the forbidden fruit. Why this little thing? What was so unique, so different? I mean, how is an apple that much different from these other fruits? We got oranges and apples. Well, we got a banana, orange, lemon. And then two, there's the idea that somehow the paradise type situation was closer to a tropical island where you have tropical types of fruits, pineapples and coconuts and mango, papaya. Something in those makes me think they're a little bit more heavenly or godly. I don't know where I get all these ideas. Anyway, the other thing about this apple, it's always got me chewing on it. In my video in this series that this is a part of, this one should be number 63. I'm not sure though. I'll state the date though, that I'm sure of. We're still in March. This is the 28th, Wednesday, 2012. And this video is a continuation of the reading of the Molasses Moon book, my book, nonfiction, satire. Covers a whole lot of things according to my nephew Lonnie, who decided to call it Lindaology because it covers psychology, parapsychology, metaphysics, physics, writing, publishing, on and on. Talk about mixing apples with oranges and kiwi and lemons and limes and everything else. Anyway, so this is a continuation. I've finished reading the book. Actually, in video number 47, you could say that might have been the concluding reading, but the epilogue is still an integral part of the book, and it was only half finished there. But a lot of people evidently thought that was the nutshell and the end and the ultimate video to observe or view if you just wanted to get the gist of this and do the Reader's Digest thing of the single video nutshell. And actually, number 47 does do that pretty well. Last time I looked, it had 103 views, and most of the other ones are in the teens or 20s, and a few of them are up to 50. But I don't think any of them have passed that halfway mark to the 100, which to me, the 100th monkey concept means something. And I don't know whether monkeys make that leap of sharing some kind of a concept learned or taught just through brainwaves from a distance after the 100th monkey has learned something. Does it take more of us with our harder heads of humans to share a concept like that? Are we more complicated to the point that our wires can get crossed easily, and we don't share as in as potent of a primitive manner on the collective unconscious, according to Carl Jung, or the unconscious side of our minds. And according to me, I work with that with capital U, capital C for unconscious, and have developed it into a character literally in my books, not just in Molasses Moon. I think I opened that one up maybe in one of the Moon books. I don't know if it was New Moon Blues or Full Moon Rising. Might have even been Morning Comes. Call that the Sun book in my Sun and Moon series of gem books. Anyway, getting back to the apple. Every time I contemplate that story of Adam and Eve and the serpent in the garden, the forbidden fruit, I keep thinking, for some reason I keep thinking that God actually wanted Eve to eat the apple. And yet you've got this big bad evil serpent tempting, appearing for all practical purposes and spiritual purposes in the Bible, really appearing to mean that that was the fall of mankind. It's what made us fall down into suffering and pain, which in awareness, if it's a knowledge of good and evil, then the knowledge of evil would be the knowledge of pain and suffering and all the things that most people probably would most often not see as good. And yet something in me just keeps feeling that we were supposed to do this. Also, I keep feeling that suffering isn't necessary and it isn't right, that it shouldn't be. From a very young age, I felt the suffering of other people and myself very strongly, and had something very, very deep inside of me that knew that that shouldn't be necessary, that it wasn't right. Suffering and pain and sickness, especially sickness, because I had a lot of that all through my life, being born a month premature in 1947, when in most cases babies that undeveloped literally, and probably the last thing you get is your magnesium, which has been the bane of my life, that severe deficiency. So now, where to go first? The things I wrote a few little notes here, or goads, whatever you want to call them. Good versus evil, the knowledge of that separation, which means that you would be experiencing evil in order to contrast it with good. Now, what would be the purpose, I kept asking myself too, if God did want us to do this, and did want us to even go against, this is interesting now connecting to my video, the recent video, where I talked about the test of faith. It was brought up in video number 55, and I don't remember if I discussed that in number 62 or 61, but all my comments and notes, introductions to the videos, give a little information on what each one's about. So, in the test of faith, the point the Catholic priests and spokespeople were trying to make is that God does not ask us to blindly obey ministers of the church even. According to this, from what I remember on that retreat discussed in video number 55, or no, 62, because it was the video talking about the test of faith which occurred in that retreat, the Catholic retreat in the Colorado mountains when I was in my college days back in the 70s. So according to that, only the Pope is infallible. Only the Pope of all the authorities in the Catholic Church would have the authority or the capacity to ask a person to do a test of faith like this, of going out into the Rocky Mountains, high in the cold and the snow, and do something that is dangerous enough to have a high probability of causing harm or death. So what they were trying to say is that they wanted you to say no. They wanted you to disobey, in a sense. And I still keep wondering, the way we're developed with such curiosity, with such a desire to know, but did that start when we were created? Was that intended by the Creator? Did He want us to disobey so that we'd set off on our own path, even not away from Him, if it's even a Him? I tend to myself believe that it is a single consciousness rather than a collective of consciousnesses, mostly because of what I expressed in Molasses Moon, and how I just value the concept of an individual single mind thinking clearly. So the question still is, were we designed from the beginning, before the Garden of Eden, to rebel, to disobey even our Creator, to be that independent and that individualistic? I don't know. I'm having, like they say, more questions than I do answers. The older I get, the more I study, the more I search. I have a lot of speculation, though, and I have a real wild imagination, and I don't have trouble coming up with my theories of everything, which I recently wrote in a comment on my latest video. My theory of explains everything is that everything goes in circles. And that I got sparked by Tom, a conversation that we had. Periodically, we have some very interesting conversations where we get way out into the ozone and go into the cosmos and into the depths of philosophy and the inside of quantums and outside, as far as you can go into the universe, as far as you can go out there, bigger, and as far as you can go in there, smaller. So anyway, everything goes in circles. When you think of atoms, everything has something that seems like revolving around it. Everything's circling something else. As you go bigger, the galaxies are circling, solar systems are circling, we're circling suns, and suns are circling other collectives, and universes might be circling universes. But anyway, that's another thing, another theory of explaining everything. What I'm getting at is that I can speculate and come up with theories, come up with some potential answers, but I just like to keep even those open. Maybe someday I'll come to something that I can invest in strongly, like a lot of religions seem to do. They just want to develop some kind of a system or a paradigm or a design, a philosophical, ethical design, and then say that's it, or say that came from God. And it's very possible that all the holy books have been sourced from that higher being. And then the key is in the translation. And especially when you have them going through different languages and different cultures and different time frames, and just the limitations of any language, let alone translating and transferring from one language to another, from one time to another, from one culture to another. That's why I believe that even though I love books and I seek truth in books, and I have a respect for all holy books, I actually do, and a fascination. And I really appreciated Jack Engelhard mentioning a link to video number 41 about me seeing the universe as a giant clock. Very precise. And so I included that link fairly recently in my Facebook page to an article called The Architecture of Holiness. I think that's a fantastic title. It was a very interesting article, validating some of the Jewish biblical traditions of God giving measurements so precise of things that he wanted Moses to build, or Moses or anyone else. And the precise, absolutely precise measurements, which to me is just awesome. There are so many things to me that prove, in my mind, the existence of a higher consciousness, a higher creative consciousness that did create reality as we know it and as we don't know it. And that I've said before too, that I believe that intelligent design and evolution just go together. That any higher consciousness that would have been able to create life in this complex, precise design of the planets and the universes. Life is dynamic, so life is going to evolve and change and constantly readapt. So to me, if anything, theories of evolution and intelligent design actually support each other, except that you have to step out of the original view that I don't know who was holding, that the intelligent design meant that mankind as he is today, not thinking that he might have evolved from who knows what, that this is in the image of God. Well, there are a lot of different ways to look at that. Are we just physically in his image, or is our rational capacities in his image, our conscious mind, the way our minds work? And is that true? Are we really in his image? That makes sense to me. That rings true. That brings then to more topics that I wanted to get into and maybe discuss today. We're dealing with the knowledge of good and evil, for better or for worse, seems to be where we are, definitely extremely aware of things that seem not good, that seem, if not ultimately evil, then painful. People separate good from evil in many different ways. As I've said before, to me, the ultimate evil actually is forcing your will upon another being, or just forcing your will in a situation where it's not required for your survival or health. So self-defense, of course, I believe in. But this thing of separating, here we are, supposedly in dire straits, needing to be able to separate good and evil. Is it so that we can destroy evil? So that we can avoid it? So that we can align with good and be happier and wealthier? Or, like some people believe, aligning with good is not to be happy and wealthy and comfortable, but the path to good is self-denial and self-deprivation. Of course, I don't want to believe that, because I do seek happiness and comfort, joy, as I at the same time make the best of difficulties or suffering or pain and try to learn from them. Here again, the knowledge of what is evil. And if God wanted us to do this, what would have been the purpose? What would have been the purpose? I can think of many, but I think I'll leave the question open for now. But then, okay, in this year it seems that it's important, if we don't want to end up being in a world that might be controlled by evil, in the sense of controlled by those few people that I see as being very dark, who want to control and manipulate and use whole populations to their own end. And by control, I mean to a degree of enslavement through, either do this or you're going to suffer, maybe very severely, to limit, to incarcerate, to make any going back to the many dictatorships we've had in our history, where one person or a small group of people ran tyranny over their populations and ruled by fear and control and punishment and torture, rather than, like in our society, the first experiment that I'm aware of that goes to this degree of developing a concept like capitalism that allows the fueling of individual spirits, not just individual humans, but to me, capitalism is the key to even have a spirit be motivated to accomplish, to produce, to create. I think that in a physical world, the spirit needs material compensation in order to want to keep going and keep working and keep producing. So if there are a few people, and it would have to be just a few, that are somehow covertly working together to enslave or control, to a degree they might have to allow a certain amount of freedom and ignorance, and might need to be cloaked to a degree, in order for us to be motivated and spirited enough to keep the world turning, so to speak, to keep the civilization we've developed at enough of a level that those who want to be comfort upon the labors of others under their control, so that they can maintain the level of comfort and wealth and security that they would like to have for themselves. Or does this go beyond? Is evil something beyond just certain dark humans that want to control everything to their own ends? Is there more to it than just human? Are we going to an Armageddon described in the Bible, of a battle between true good and evil, of the higher powers of good and evil beyond our realm? If so, if we are going toward this battle of needing to identify, to draw the lines between good and evil, now most people are just going to want to go along with whatever religion they subscribe to, and that is their choice, because I do believe in free choice. You can't grow consciousness or spirit or develop human strength, I think, without having free choice. So in other words, how would you recognize a con? That's part of the key. How do you recognize or identify those people that might be attempting to take control of this country politically, this campaign coming up? How can you separate the people that have good intentions and want to serve their people, and the ones who want to enslave and control them to their own ends, with returning the minimum to them that will allow them to keep working? How do you recognize? Look for people that try to force and manipulate. People that are trying to push something through very rapidly and want to hide the details of what that thing is that they're attempting to push. Look mostly for people who are trying to hide their true motives their true desires, their true purposes. And for the good, I'd say look for people who want to be as open and honest as they can. From one little paradigm, just look at foods that are stated to be 100% organic. They want everything, all the labeling, to be open and above board. They want to be real clear of what's in their food. And that's because there's nothing in it but food. And they even want to be clear if people are trying to get away from certain types of food that are normally healthy, but that have people have developed allergies to, like gluten or certain tree nuts, certain things that for the normal population, are not considered anti-nutrients. They want to be open and clear about what their food does and does not contain, so that people can easily separate the kind of foods they prefer and need to go along to avoid certain things that cause them harm through allergies or whatever reason. So there are certain people in the food marketplace that clearly want to be clear on their labeling and on their presentations, and there are others that will go to legislative procedures, push through legislation to change terminology, to do anything they can to hide something that is in their food that they feel people won't want and won't buy. That gives you an easy line of demarcation, except that as they try to change through the FDA the labels, a lot of them have been able to use the term natural in a twisted way, that to include things that have been genetically modified through organisms, microorganisms that are injected one way or another into food. Now this might at some point evolve into something not harmful. I'm not sure myself. I don't think anybody else is. But the point is, some people are trying to hide what they're doing, and others are trying to put everything on the table. This is my fruit on the table, and all these, I'm buying organic. These are all organic fruits, 100%. Because as much as possible, I do want to be away from my own needs, GMOs and soys and certain things that are just unnecessary and that tend to kick out the magnesium that I need to maintain fairly desperately. On the other hand, look at something else, the term Roundup. In Hitler's days, that term was used to isolate a certain group of people that they wanted to destroy, as if they were not even human. It'd round up the Jewish people. And now I look at the same term and it gives me chills almost, and I don't want to believe that it would be in any way the same, but Roundup seeds from the companies that have their seeds genetically modified with the Roundup type of seed to resist certain types of pests and fertilizers, chemical fertilizers. Whereas other natural types of seeds, or seeds that are not genetically modified through organisms, purposely modified to change the food. So what I'm wondering is, are there antidotes then? Some type of antidotes in foods that are being put out by the GMO people? Is it like the Roundup seeds that are genetically modified to resist certain things that, according to them, possibly other natural foods might not be able to resist. Well, my theory is that there is a God, there is an intelligent design. It does evolve dynamically at its own timing. And the key, as I brought out in Molasses Moon, timing is a very powerful, very potent and vital key. And I think you can push or slow down timing a certain amount. But if you go beyond that amount, then you might be creating something that will upset the overall system. But I think that this higher being that created everything had to have anticipated this somehow. It's the way we're designed, to be curious and to poke and manipulate things. And it's in some people's nature also to want to hide what they're doing because they want to keep doing it, and they know that there are majorities of other people that would like to stop them. So here you go, the majority forcing its will upon a minority. Just because something is a majority doesn't mean it's right. Because something else is a minority doesn't mean it's wrong. And the vice versa would be true. So there's a lot to think about. A lot to think about. And that's, I think, what we were designed to do. And whether we made a mistake in some type of an origin and disobeyed a rule, and we're thrown, like in one of the chapters that I read on Jack Engelhardt's book, fascinating book of his memoirs of 18 little accounts, each one a different chapter. In the one of my favorite ones, the telegram, I think that's the one that described that I think it was 56,000 times the amount of light in the world before Eve fell and fell to the temptation of eating a bite out of the apple, if I have that right. Before that fall, there was 56,000 times more light in the world. Now that's something else that's fascinating to contemplate. According to my gem books, I've made some speculations about lower light and higher light as being altering those being necessary to create a physical reality, as opposed to living previously in a more purely mental reality with no physical matter. And according to my books, I speculate about time itself and timing needing to be developed in order to be able to create a physical realm. The Gnostic Gospels talk about a concept that maybe God's spirits or spirits were never intended to be trapped inside of a physical realm. Some of those viewpoints say that evil is having a spirit incarnated into a physical realm. I don't know, like I say, I have questions, very few answers. Maybe no answers, just speculations. Anyway, this probably is enough for one video. I haven't given much in the way of isolating a con, but just the feeling of force, even with yourself when you're trying to make a choice. One choice you feel like you feel pushed to do, almost afraid that if you don't do it, something really awful will happen. You're pushed by fear and different emotions, negative emotions. And on the other side, it might be something you clearly and cleanly want, but you're being pushed away from it by fear, by manipulation, by, shoulds that I call them. It's hard to separate all those emotions. And I've also mentioned in some of my astrological input that there are cycles, one of them called a yod, in which the planets form a certain type of triangle. And when that yod point is triggered, the apex of it, at a certain day, on a certain time, sometimes a certain minute, what happens is right then, you have no more doubt, there's no more push, just a clear, clean awareness of which choice is right, not only which choice you want at the deepest part of yourself, deepest, clearest, cleanest part of yourself, but it's just the right choice. And all of a sudden you know it. And like I've said in another video too about this, sometimes right at that time when a yod is triggered, somebody calls you on the telephone and just says something out of the blue that might not even relate to the issue, but something that they say gives you a key that you needed, and it's like a lock is opened in your soul or in your heart or in your mind. And that was the missing little piece of information you needed. So sometimes even making choices and releasing all the confusion and the force is just timing. So I do think timing is vital, and that's why also I keep my mantra, remember, the point of power is in the present. Be where I am and see the significance. So, now it's like every time I eat an apple, I wonder, is there a difference? Some type of difference in this fruit? A difference that could be actually good if God intended us to rebel and go this route? Or is there something in this that would tell us what we need to avoid in food? I don't know. The saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. In many ways, to me, that would be good. There are good physicians, there are good doctors, we all know that. But we all also know that we would prefer to be healthy on our own. So, here's to your good health, to a good life, to a better future. Take care.